Carla was born in St. Louis, Missouri, and she was married to Pete and the mom to Michael, Timmy, and Ray. Mike and Tim were born with Huntington's. Recently, Mike and Tim won their hard-fought battle against HD. Tim passed in 2019 and Michael passed in 2020. So she was their caregiver and advocate, but above all else, she was their mother. So we will just jump right in, Carla. And this is going to be a question and answer kind of format. And she'll end the end of the conversation with a few added thoughts. Can you please give us a little bit of background about how HD has impacted your family?
Of course, like a lot of families, our family knew something was different about my husband's family, my ex-husband, but no one ever named it. It was just, yeah. There was blamed on alcoholism, all kinds of other things. And the name Huntington's disease didn't enter my world until my oldest son, Michael, had seen an obituary in the newspaper. And he said, "Mom, I think this is Aunt Jory." And I said, "I've never known anyone with a name like that. So it probably is." And so he reached out to his uncle, and because he wanted to go to the funeral, but he wanted me to go too. And I said, "I'm not sure how your grandmother would feel about that. And I certainly wouldn't want to cause her any pain. So we need the okay to move forward." And so we did. We went to this funeral, and as we were leaving, we were saying goodbye to everyone, and my ex-mother-in-law finally said, "You need to get your kids tested." I said, "For what?" She said, "For Huntington's disease." And I'm like, "What is that?" So long story short, of course, we went home, we Googled, so there was how we found out about Huntington's disease. And along with other families, this disease impacts us all. It impacts us emotionally, it impacts us financially, and it affects us physically. Those of us who do the actual hands-on caregiving, you're going to feel that later on in life. And so it does affect all of us. So Huntington's has been a part of my family, my existence, actually since about 1973, although I had no clue at that time what it was.
At what age, Carla, did Michael start showing symptoms, and what symptoms were they?
So Michael tested positive for Huntington's in September of 2009. He was 36 years old, had 3 children at the time, young ones that were there. And I would say that probably right off the top, he had a lot of problems with balance, and he would fall a lot. He was injured a lot at work. He was injured he'd fall down steps and things like that at home. I think that was like the very first indication, but I think that it was heat intolerance, questionable decision making, those types of things. They call those the soft symptoms. However, I don't think they're very soft. Some of the decisions come back and they're not soft at all. So there was that.
So you've already mentioned the age that Michael tested, but was there a certain reason why he chose to test?
Of course, by this time, my younger son had already had his diagnosis, but Michael truly believed that he didn't have it. But what happened is that his foreman at work was a friend of ours, and I kept tabs on Michael, just taking the temperature, checking how you doing at work. Everything's fine. And so our friend called me and he said, "Listen, Carla, Mike's cussing out the bosses. He's threatening to beat up the other workers because he doesn't like the music that they're playing." And he said, "I'm going to tell you, he's about to get fired." I said, "Thank you very much." Got a hold of Michael and said, "You call in sick right now for your shift tonight, And the doctor and the social worker at our Center of Excellence, Stacy Barton, and his doctor, Dr. Pietro Mazzoni, seriously jumped on it and started paperwork. And I told Michael, I said, you won't be going back to work. I said, there's too much to lose. So I was very blessed and fortunate to have had that friend who interceded on his behalf, even though Michael said, it's all Greg's fault that I can't go back to work, which I said, you don't even know how much you owe Greg for that phone call. But I didn't expect that he would understand. But I understood what Greg did, and I was very grateful for it.
Yeah. Stacy Barton's awesome. She is so great.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
As Michael's disease symptoms progressed, what would you say was the most challenging symptom he faced, and how did it impact his life?
Early on, like I had talked about, it was his balance. And then as he progressed, he was living on his own when he first quit working. It was things like me stopping in unexpectedly, and there's no food in the house. It's like, what's going on here, bud? Anyway, it was decided when we had Tim first to take care of, that we built an addition onto our home so that we could because I probably would have ended up in jail had I had to deal with one more nursing home for Tim. So I told Michael, because we built it with both of them in mind, and I said, I think it's time now for you to come out there. I don't need to come out there. I want to live on my own. And I said, you need to come. And so he did. But he was out here, and one day he decided he was going to wash his car. And so he never even got it actually squirted off or anything before he fell in the driveway. And he was so upset. I saw him. I ran to him, helped him, and he was so upset. And he said, that's it. I'm not driving anymore. And I thought, well, that worked out okay, because we had a fight with Tim about it. So I think originally it was the balance, but then of course, as he progressed, really like towards the end, the most challenging thing that his kids that I had faced was the psychosis that comes along with Huntington's for so many of our people.
Gosh, that's true. Thank you, Carla. And this is jumping a little forward, skipping the middle part of his life. But since your talk is titled with having to work through hospice, we're going to jump into starting to talk about that process. Can you please walk us through the conversation of hospice and how that was presented to you as his mom and to Michael?
In the weeks previous to this, let me just step back to say 8 months prior, in the fall of 2019. And that was when that psychosis hit. And it was a nightmare. It was between myself, between the doctors, between the people I know here in our community of HD. We could not get anything to touch these psychiatric hallucinations, the going outside and people are banging on things. It was very unsettling, not only for him, because he kept trying to make us understand that this was real, and it was to him, but it was really super hard because my son was such a smart guy. And that was really hard. So fast forward through the spring, and we finally got a medication cocktail that was effective. So he started coming out of the psychosis, and certainly by June, July of 2020, he was with us. He was still with us, but he started choking. He was choking a lot, water, meds, food, no matter what, he was just choking. And then he got really sick. And so I told him, I said, we need to go to the hospital. We need to find out what's making you so sick. And so this was in the fall, October, November. And we took him and they admitted him into the hospital. And At that point in time, the next morning, I went to the hospital and the doctor was there with his film from the swallow study that they had done that morning. So as we sat there and looked at this video, I could see that the flap was no longer closing properly, that the flap, meaning the flap that keeps your liquids from going into your lungs or your food and your air going. So that flap was not working. And they said it was a direct result of the ravages of Huntington's disease. I watched just eensy tiny little bits of stuff going straight into his lungs. And he watched. And I said, okay, so how do we fix this? And they said, we don't fix this. So at that point in time, the doctor said, we'd really like for you to speak with our hospice group here. And they left us alone. And I said, are you understanding what's happening here? And he said, yeah, I understand, Mom. And the hospice came in, they gave us all the options. They'd continue to treat him if we wanted to keep bringing him in. They said, we'll never turn you away. You can come, or you can have hospice in a facility, or you can have hospice at home. And I said, I'd like to have a few minutes with my son. I said the words out loud. We had the hard discussion. And I said, Michael, you do understand that when you choose hospice, that they're just going to see you through to the end. They're going to make your death much more comfortable because that is what's going to happen. Do you understand that? And he said, yeah, Mom. And he said, Mom, I'm tired. So just that little tiny bit of stuff that you think, oh, cough it up or something. No, it was just enough to eventually kill him. And that's what it did. And I think that one of the real themes that run through Huntington families is just heartbreak at the injustice of things.
So Carla, do you think that Michael made the decision to bring in hospice?
Absolutely. They presented it. He and I spoke about it. I explained and filled out what I felt like he needed to hear. And yes, he made that choice, and he knew what he was doing. Such courage for these guys.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, for sure. Did Michael have any pros versus cons that he shared with you, or that the hospice team shared with you?
I don't think he had any pros and cons. I think he was very accepting of the news. I think that he was prepared. At one point in time, after we had him home, he did say to me, almost like it had just sunk into him. And my husband helped me with him at the end because Michael was just so weak. I couldn't handle him by myself to put him in the bed and things like that. So Pete helped me with him at the end there every night and every morning. But, oh shoot, I think I lost my train of thought.
No, you're okay.
Totally happens.
I'm so sorry. I don't know where I was going with that.
No,
All good.
Yes, I do. I didn't know where I was going with it. So that night, I had gotten him into the restroom and everything, and brushing his teeth and all that. And then he came out of the bathroom, and Pete and I were sitting there, and he looked straight at me and he said, "I'm gonna die, don't you?" And I said, "Yes, I know." I said, "But it's not going to be tonight. So how about if we just get tucked in?" But that was the only time that he ever went, "I'm really going to die." Like it just really sunk in that minute.
So did Michael know anyone that was on hospice before he made the decision that it was time for him to go on hospice?
No, we had no experience at all with anyone on hospice that we were aware of or close to. Now that we have our own personal experience here in this family, I would choose hospice for myself. I really would. It was amazing. I would recommend it for any family.
I'm sorry. Were most okay. Were most people supportive of Michael's choice? If not, why?
Yes, our entire family were very respectful. I've had so much help throughout the decades of caregiving with this disease, and always by my side. I have a close-knit group of friends and my family, my sisters, Michael's kids, and I've been blessed that way. Everyone knew. There was nobody that had their head in the sand thinking there was more to do, or everyone knew what this meant. They all thought that Michael was very brave for choosing it. They were happy, his kids, to be able to have him for a little while longer. And so, no, everybody was on board.
And once you made the decision to start hospice, how fast did the process start?
Oh my goodness, they were very efficient. So it was the day after that discussion, the hospice. And so that morning I was here waiting to go pick him up in the afternoon from the hospital. During that time, they had the truck pulled up with a hospital bed, with a oxygen machine. Intake nurse came that afternoon. By the time I went to get Michael, everything was in place. Everything. The meds were there. The nurse was there. It was amazing. It was very comforting to have somebody be in charge other than me.
Yeah.
So just because of time, and I'm sorry, Carla, because you've covered most of our questions that we had on the list, but what would you say were some extra services that were available to Michael that were not available prior to hospice?
So we did have a young lady who came and helped us, helped shower him. We had chaplain care, this woman was amazing. She took care of Michael's spiritual side and my husband and I. She sat with us on our own, said, "This is tough for you right now." And so I felt very cared for, and I felt that Michael was very well cared for.
And did you feel like you and Michael had control over like the care that was given and the choices that were made with hospice?
Absolutely. We did have control over everything. Now, there seems to be a misunderstanding among some people that you have to stop all the medications once you go on hospice. Not true. You do, like I told them straight up. I said, "Look, we have just gotten him to a place with these meds where he's lucid, he's able to interact with us, and I will not take him off those meds." And they said, "No, you don't have to take him off of those meds. We don't want," because I told her, I said, "I don't want his last days to be lost to us because of these hallucinations." And only thing that they like, so say if a person has heart problems or something like that, and they're on a medication that keeps their heart steady or something life prolonging, you got to stop that. They're not trying to prolong your life. They're trying to provide you comfort in the end days of your life.
And how long was Michael on hospice?
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
To wrap things up, I know you mentioned wanting to say a little bit about the last day of his life, and we can briefly touch on that as well. And then anyone out there watching, Carla's also on Facebook, can be reached out to, and she is great at telling her story. Yeah, go ahead and we'll wrap up with that.
So to wrap it up, the morning that Michael passed. He had been on a 2-hour schedule of meds from hospice, and I was that person. So I was out there in their apartment. I was up every 2 hours with him, giving him meds, adjusting him, doing. So the last time I was up, and I had my alarm set for every 2 hours, was 7. And then my husband came out, I guess it was probably about 8:30 that morning, and I had dozed off in the recliner, and he just touched my arm and he said, "Babe, I think Michael's gone." And so we went in there, and he was still warm. I said, "No, I don't think he has." But then, of course, you just realize that, yes, he just did pass. And I thought, isn't that the way, Michael? You always were very independent. Go without me. I just wanted to say that after that, I want to contrast the hospice way with my younger son, who passed away suddenly, very disturbed overnight, wouldn't have guessed it. And all the craziness that 911 and first responders and everybody piling in, and you're hysterical. It was none of that. Michael's last day and the day that he passed, it was peaceful. I was able to bathe him, which is a death ritual that I think is so important. I was able to dress him. I was able to get our family together. Our chaplain came. We did a bedside service that was the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced, with all of his kids there. My sisters were there. We sang, we did poetry, we anointed Michael's head, we prayed, and just such a stark contrast between losing my youngest son a year earlier and this death. I felt like I was able to, through this process of hospice, really come to an acceptance my own self, that I was going to let this one go too. And it was a good death. His doctor, Mazzoni, called me, and after he found out, because I of course let Stacy know, and he actually reached out and called me, and he said, "I can only hope that some of my patients had a mother and an advocate like you." And that felt really good. I just want to thank Dr. Mazzoni and Stacy. I also want to thank the SSM hospice team. And I'd like to thank you ladies, the Help for HD International, whose existence helps our HD community very well in certain ways that no other organization does. I'm proud to be a part of this, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Carla.